Hello everyone. Dear children, today we shall talk about how the France peoples abolished the monarchy systems and established the republic systems in the society. So those topics we shall be learning in details. So dear children, in my previous classes we had the discussions that in 1789 the people of France, basically from the new middle classes, they started revolting against the king, and when the revolt was becoming very intense during that time, at last the king who agreed to become the constitutional monarchy of France in 1789. And in 1789 itself, the king who accepted the National Assembly, and from then now onwards he said that the king is going to be the constitutional monarchy of France. When such kind of developments which was taken place in France, the neighboring countries like Prussia as well as the Austria, they were very worried about France, because in France the peoples who started revolting against the kings and they established the constitutional monarchy in France. So when there was such kind of situations, it was really having some kind of worried in Austria as well as in Prussia, because those peoples were not willing that the monarchy system should be abolished in the society, because those peoples are belonging to conservative powers and they were worried about the developments that was taken place in France. And here, when the king Louis XVI, who agreed upon the demands of the new middle classes in 1789, during that time the king was having dissatisfactions and he had the secret negotiations with Russia as well as with Austria. And by having the secret negotiations, they were trying to send the troops and they were trying to destroy the events which was taking place at France. So before the coming of these troops as well as the army to France to destroy the National Assembly in France, the new middle classes who had come into power, the General Assembly peoples, they started war against the Prussia as well as with Austria. So here many of the volunteers, they came forward, they joined the armies, and they said that it is their duties as well as the responsibilities of the peoples to save the peoples or to save the nations from despotic power. So here most of the peoples, especially from these new middle classes, they were saying that it is the duties as well as the responsibility to save the nations or to save the peoples from the despotic rules, because during the despotic rules the peoples of France, they were not at all enjoying any kind of social privileges except the peoples who are belonging to the first estate as well as the second estates. So there was some kind of dissatisfactions which was found among these third estates groups. So in order to get the liberty, the freedom as well as equal opportunities in the society, they started revolting against the kings. Further, I would like to say that, my dear children, in the previous classes we had the discussions that during the time of king, the king who called the member of the three estates in order to impose tax on the common peoples, and when the king had called the three groups peoples to decide further to impose tax on the nations in order to pay back the loan amount or to maintain the government offices or to maintain the palace which was there in Versailles. So during that time, the common peoples were facing lot of challenges in the societies. There was crop failure, bad harvest, there was epidemic. So such kind of situations which brought the people of France to the street, and that is the reason the common peoples were already dissatisfied with the kings. They do not want to have the monarchy power because the monarchy is not at all concerned about the peoples, is not at all concerned about the good of the society. That is why the peoples, they thought of doing revolutions against the kings, and they were successfully abolished the monarchy systems. They successfully installed this constitutional monarchy in 1789 by framing the new constitutions for France in 1791. So dear children, here when such kind of events was taking place in France, we see the treaty of the King Louis XVI with Austria as well as with Prussia, and those peoples were trying to suppress these national assemblies who came into power in 1789. And when they thought of doing such kind of things in order to suppress the peoples, suppress the national assembly, during that time we see the new middle classes who are coming, and those peoples are coming and they are joining the army and they are fighting against the Prussia as well as with Austria. And when they are fighting against these Austria and Prussia, before that, before the declarations of the war, there was the National Assembly who voted in 1792 so that those people will decide further to declare war against Austria as well as with Prussia. So dear children, already I have told you that the 1,000 volunteers who are joining the hands of the army in order to sacrifice their lives to save the nations, and they thought that it is their duties and responsibilities to have war against the kings as well as the aristocracy, because during the time of kings and aristocracy there was lot of dissatisfactions which was seen among the new middle classes. The new middle classes were not at all given any kind of facilities which was enjoyed by the noble groups as well as by the clergy groups. So here, in order to have the movements very violent and very intense, they started composing patriotic songs in order to inspire the peoples, and the patriotic songs was Marshalese, which was composed by Roget the Islay. So these songs which was sung first during the time of the first revolutions that was taken place in France in 1789, and on the first revolutions itself they sang the song of Marshalles in order to create a sense of unity in the society, in order to inspire the people so that peoples will come up with commitment, with dedications, and those peoples will start revolting against the kings as well as with the emperor, because during the time of emperor and kings there is so many injustices which are happening in the society, and to save peoples from such kind of injustice activities, they are coming forward, joining their hands, and they are started revolting against the kings as well as against the aristocracy as well as against the landlords. So dear children, when there was the declarations of the war against Austria and Prussia, during that time there was lot of economic difficulties that was happened in the society. We see, so these revolutionary wars which brought losses as well as economic difficulties in the societies. So we see the divisions of work which has been set apart in the society. The men were fighting themselves at the front. At the same time, the women, they were the breadwinner, They were working in coffee houses. They were working in different kind of coffee houses as well as in different areas in order to earn the bread here. And their duties and responsibility is to look after the family. And at the same time, we see the men, they were fighting at the front and they were fighting for their nations, saving their nations from despotic rule. And we understand that when the war was going on continuously against Austria as well as with Prussia, we see there are certain members from the society who were continuously having dissatisfactions in the society, and those peoples were dissatisfied because during the framing of constitutions in 1791, only the political rights as well as the voting rights was given to the rich sections of the society. At the same time, these less privileged peoples were not given political rights in the society. Their rights were denied here. That is where there was some kind of dissatisfactions that was seen among the large sections of the society, and those peoples were convinced that they need to carry forward the ideas of discussions. They need to have the discussions regarding the constitutions which was framed in 1791, and they were talking that the political rights is only given to the rich sections of the society. So there we see the emerging of the political clubs, and in that political clubs, peoples were talking or they were discussing about government policy, government plans, and those peoples were saying and discussing that the political rights must be given to each and every individuals who are living in the society. So dear children, the most successful club was Jacobins Clubs. So we see the emergence of the Jacobins Clubs who came into being during the periods of the Revolutionary War which was happening with Austria as well as with Prussia in 1791. In between those periods, we see the emerging of the Jacobins Clubs where peoples were going, discussing different kind of government plans, different kind of government policies. And in these Jacobins Clubs, we see the active role of the women who were talking about their difficulties, because in those times the conditions of women was really painful and really very pathetic. Those peoples were not given rights in the society. Their rights were completely denied in the society, and that is the reasons we see the active role of the women who are sharing their difficulties, who are joining the political associations, who are coming to this club, sharing their views, and they are sharing their difficulties during these periods of 1791 to 1792. Apart from that, my dear children, already I have told you about the emerging of these Jacobins Clubs, and we see in these formations of the Jacobins Clubs, we see only the less prosperous middle classes peoples who join the group, who join the clubs, and especially the less privileged peoples such as shoemaker, the poor peoples, the landless labor. All these peoples were part of these Jacobin clubs, because Jacobins clubs is the one who are accepting the less prosperous society to be part of these Jacobin clubs, and the leader of these Jacobins clubs was Maximilian Robespierre. So dear children, in these Jacobins clubs, peoples were sharing their ideas. They were talking about different kind of policies as well as different kind of plans of the government. They were coming with the ideas, and they thought of implementing such kind of policies, such kind of ideologies in the society. And we see the active role of these Jacobins clubs who came into being in 1791. children, as we had learned that in the Jacobins clubs there are so many peoples who are belonging from the less privileged sections of the society, and when the less privileged peoples who join the Jacobins clubs, we see the changes which happen to the less privileged peoples, and here the large groups of the Jacobins club, they decided to wear the long trousers to set themselves free from fashionable society. At the same time, the noble peoples who wear the knee breeches cloth, and here the Jacobins club, they came to be known as sans clothis, mean without knee breeches. And at the same time, they wear the red cape, which symbolizes liberty. So, dear children, here we see the clothing pattern which was changed among the common peoples, and with this we understood that there is a ending of this aristocracy in the society. And here in 1792 we see the planning of the Jacobins clubs, and they made the plannings to capture the Persian peoples who were supplying very less food. At the same time, they were supplying those kind of foods which was costing very high prices in the society. So with anger, the Jacobins clubs, they captured the peoples, they captured the government. Why? Because during the time of king, there was a very shortage of food. At the same time, we see the increasing of price rate, which was not possible for the common peoples to buy the food, to get the availability of food grains in the society. And due to those factors, those common peoples were having anger in mind to capture the Persians who were supplying very less quantity of foods, and the high costing of foods, which is not at all possible for the common peoples. At the same time, on August 10, so what they did was, these Jacobins clubs, they went to the palace of Tuileries and killed the guard and captured the king, and keeping the kings for several hours. Later on, when the assembly was elected, during that time, this royal family who were imprisoned. Then when this national assembly was elected, we see the extensive rights which was given to all men and women who are having or who are above 21 years of age. So here the political rights was given to the common peoples who did not get voting rights during the formations of the constitutions in 1791. So here when the political rights was not given to the common peoples, due to that we see the most less privileged peoples who were having dissatisfactions in the society, and when there was a dissatisfactions, they thought of doing the revolutions, movements in the society. Why? Because there is no extensive rights which is given to the common peoples here. So with the elected of these assemblies in 1792, we see the political rights was given to the most common peoples who are having or who are above 21 years of age, and here the political equality status is given to each and every man and women who are living in the society. So dear children, here the extensive rights is basically seen during the Jacobins club, because during the formations of the Jacobins clubs we see the extensive rights which is given to each and everyone in the society. Here the common peoples are also enjoying the political rights in the society, and at the same time we see the newly elected assembly peoples, when they were elected, they were called the conventions, and on 21st September what they did was, when they were elected, to become the conventions here on 21st September 1792. They abolished the monarchy systems and they declared France to become the republic nations. So here, dear children, here we understood that with the formations of the Jacobins Clubs, they spread the movements all throughout the regions, started revolting against the kings as well as the emperor, and when the new assembly who came into power, they established the political systems in the society. They developed the new systems in the society, and with that systems they given political rights to each and everyone who are living in the society. And here before 1791, so in 1791 the political rights is given to only the richer sections of the society. Those were prosperous, those people were given more and more opportunities in the society. But with the coming of these Jacobins Clubs, we see the political rights is given to each and everyone who are living in the society, and with that we see the new political systems who came into power or who came into being, and that is known as the republic system. So dear children, as we understood that the new system who came into being, that is known as the republic systems, and here the republic systems in which people has a right to elect their representatives. So here the monarchy is not going to be hereditary. So here we see the people's power. People has a right to elect their representatives, and those elected representatives are going to form the government here. So at last or finally we see here, we understood that the Louis XVI, who was sentenced to death or who was killed because he betrayed his country. Why he betrayed his country? Because the neighboring country like Russia as well as Austria, who did not like to have or who do not want to see France to be a republic nations, and that is the reasons these Louis XVI, the king of Prussia, the king of Austria, they made a secret plan to destroy the National Assembly here. And because of betrayal activities, the Louis XVI, who was publicly executed on 21st January 1793. And at the same time, the wife of Louis XVI, she also faced the same situations and she was also publicly executed here. So dear children, here we understood that in 1791, the middle classes peoples, they framed the constitutions of France, and when they framed the constitutions of France, during that time, the Louis XVI, who became the constitutional monarchy. And here, when the constitutional monarchy was established, the extensive political rights that was not given to the common peoples. That is why we see the struggles which was continuously happening, and at last they got the king, and newly assembly was elected. And when the newly assembly was elected, during that time a republic systems who came into being in France. Thus we understood that in 1792 the France who became the republic nations. Thank you my dear children for listening to me.